You can see it in its entirety on our website, cspan.org. Now live to the floor of the U.S. Senate. More debate and possible votes on extending long-term unemployment benefits. Well, the Senate has gavelled in and immediately gone to a quorum call. We'll go back to Governor Chris Christie's news conference where he talks about the traffic controversy in New Jersey.
Plenty of other mayors were, and a number of them wound up endorsing us, and a number of them I wound up having meetings with, like you're referencing. Mayor Sokolich, not only did I never have a meeting with him, he was never mentioned to me. That's why, you go back to the question over here about, making a joke about this. That's part of the reason I felt comfortable doing it. Like, this can't have anything to do with politics. I don't even know this guy. How could it be that someone would be doing something like this against a mayor that I never had any conversations with, nor any sense that we were even seeking his endorsement? And so, that's why this is that's part of the reason this is such a mystery to me, John, and why I'm so upset about it. I would have said, who's he? I would have said, who's he? If somebody would have said something like that to me, I went, who's he and what did he do? I mean, I don't know this guy. Like I said, I may have met him in a greeting line or in a big Bergen County event or at a town hall meeting or something. But I'm telling you, like, until yesterday when I saw his picture on TV, if he walked in the room, I wouldn't have been able to pick him out. So that's not to diminish him in any way. It's just that in this context, this is not a guy who was on my radar screen in any way, nor was his name ever brought up to me by Bill Stepien until after the story started to appear about the Fort Lee traffic problem. And that's the first time that I heard about Mayor Sokolich. And so that's why, John, it's such a mystery to me. And sure, of course I was, Kelly, but you know what? He wasn't one of them. He wasn't one of them. I mean, I'm happy to admit that I was trying to run up the score. Absolutely. That's what you do in a political campaign. Try to get as many supporters, endorsers that turn into voters. That's part of your job. Of course, but I had to go get it. Invariably in these things, I ultimately had to make a phone call or do something to bring the person over the finish line. It was the rare occurrence that I never met a person or spoke to them or had that arrangement with them. So, my point to you is, I'm trying to give you context for why I didn't think this was an issue. Because I know the campaign that we ran. I know who I was pursuing as endorsers. I know who was close and we didn't get. I know who was never close or we were trying to get. And I know the people we got. This guy never was on my radar screen. And I think he confirmed that last night by saying he doesn't have any recollection of being even asked for the endorsement. And that's, that's why I don't get this. But it is what it is. And I'm responsible for it. Regardless of all that, John, I'm responsible for it. It happened on my watch. And you can't just say, well, listen, I didn't know about it, so it's not my problem. Go talk to somebody else. The buck stops at my desk. And so I have to act. And I've acted as quickly as I could responsibly. I found out about this at 10 minutes to 9 yesterday morning. By 9 o'clock this morning, Bridget Kelly was terminated. By 7 p.m. last night, Bill Stepien was told to leave the organization and leave the RGA. So I think that's pretty swift action, given that I really yesterday was blindsided by this. I'm not happy I was blindsided. I'm not proud I was blindsided. As I said when I came up here, I feel humiliated by this. I'm a person who cares deeply about doing my job well. I work extraordinarily hard at it. That's what I should do. I've taken an oath to that effect. But I am humiliated by the fact that I did not know this and that I was deceived. And that's an awful way to feel.
Mr. Governor?
Yeah.
One person who's very much loved on New York, Senator Buono. And we talked to her yesterday. Some of the emails, she was not happy. They seemed very cynical, and they said, one of the texts said, don't worry, they're Buono's children.
Buono supporters' children, yeah.
Yeah, so sort of two questions. Her Justice Department investigation, but also, it raises serious questions about kids getting to school, about CMS response. Can I just get your thoughts, please, on how serious this was, to snarl the traffic?
Wasn't good.
No?
I mean, I think that's why I'm here apologizing. It was an awful, callous, indifferent thing to do. And if it was part of a traffic study, that's one thing. Once it has political overtones, that's an entirely different matter. And that's why I am upset about this. And that's why I apologize to the people of New Jersey today, and why I apologize specifically to the people of Fort Lee who were inconvenienced over those 4 days. It's not right. And that's why I'm here apologizing. Well, I have no idea. And again, I will respond to those questions as I always have. As a former U.S. attorney, when I was U.S. attorney, I hated when politicians stood behind podiums and told the Department of Justice what to do. And I am not going to do that after complaining to my colleagues about it for 7 years when politicians would do it. Now that I'm one of those, I'm not going to do that. Yes, sir.
Governor, you just said in an earlier bite, I have nothing to hide. And then you repeated it. I have nothing to hide.
Right.
In your long public career, the U.S. Attorney's Office, first term as governor, second term now, could you ever imagine you stand in front of this many cameras and this many reporters and have to say, I have nothing to hide?
No.
Yet you had to.
Yes. That was a searing bit of commentary, wasn't it? Brian.
Governor, obviously this has been a traumatic experience. You said you got very little, if any, sleep whatsoever last night. Did you ever, for even a brief moment, entertain the idea that perhaps you should die?
Oh, God, no. No. Brian. I mean, listen, I know you're asking. I am. I heard Henley over here, I'm back. That's a crazy question, man. I mean, I'm telling you, I had nothing to do with this. And so, no, I never gave any thought to doing that at all, nor would I. What was I thinking about last night when I couldn't go to sleep? How did this happen? That's what I was thinking about. When you're responsible, and I spent a lot of time keeping Mary Pat up last night, talking me through it. That's when it's great to have a really, supportive spouse. She's willing to do 4 hours too. But that's what I was thinking. How did it happen? And why do people do this? I just don't get it. You work really hard, Brian. I work hard at this job. And it's incredibly disappointing to have people let you down this way. I'm incredibly loyal to my people. And
Madam President, 52 years ago in 1962...
Senate's in a quorum call.
I thank the chair. Madam President, I suggest further proceedings, the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, 52 years ago in 1962, President John Kennedy signed the Trade Expansion Act into law. At the signing, he spoke about the importance of trade to the United States and its partners abroad and how it helps secure our preeminence in the global economy. Here's what he said, quote, "We now have the means to make certain that we build our strength together and that we can maintain this preeminence," end quote. His words still ring true today. International trade is a cornerstone of our economy.
Mr. President? Madam President?
Senator from Utah.
My friend from Montana is absolutely right. International trade is crucial to America's economy. Last year, exports supported 9.8 million American jobs, including 25% of all manufacturing jobs. Jobs created through trade are good jobs. On average, U.S. plants that export overseas pay their workers up to 18% more than non-exporting plants. They increase employment 2 to 4% faster than non-exporting plants. But we can do even better. More than 95% of the world's population and 80% of the world's purchasing power is outside of the United States. To succeed in today's world, our farmers, ranchers, and job creators must be able to fairly access the world market.
Madam President.
Senator from Montana.
Madam President, I hope everyone listened to my good friend's words. I mean, he made very important points, statistics I think most Americans are unaware of. And if they were to think about it more, we realize the importance of trade. We export so much more now. It's such a larger percent of our economy. There's such good paying jobs. Frankly, I'm perplexed that more Americans don't want to work harder to get trade agreements passed so we can export more and create more good-paying jobs in America. I might say, Madam President, that today we have a bold plan to strengthen our trade ties with nations across the Pacific and with Europe. What's our goal? Our goal is to seize new export opportunities so we can boost our economy and create jobs here at home. We all know the big to and fro here with unemployment insurance, Madam President. The key really is to have fewer people unemployed. How does that happen? There's more good-paying jobs. And there's a first step we can take to make that happen. That first step, though, is something we have to do so we can act on our trade agenda. And what is that? It's called Trade Promotion Authority, otherwise known as TPA. And that's why this afternoon, Senator Hatch and I introduced the Bipartisan Congressional Trade Priorities Act of 2014.
Mr. President, Madam President.
Senator from Utah.
Our own bill will help guarantee these landmark trade deals get done and get done right. First, the bill updates TPA by addressing 21st century issues. What are these issues? Non-scientific barriers to U.S. agricultural products, unfair competition from state-owned enterprises, arbitrary localization barriers which require U.S. companies to turn over their intellectual property or locate facilities in a foreign country in order to access foreign markets, and unnecessary restrictions on digital trade and data which flows across borders.
That's right, Madam President. Our bill also addresses critical issues such as labor, environment, and innovation. For the first time, currency manipulation. Our bill addresses it. Senator Hatch and I worked with our good friend across the hallway here in the other body, our friend Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp, to carefully craft these negotiating objectives and ensure that Congress is a full partner in trade negotiations. Our bill helps lay out in clear terms what Congress's priorities are for trade. It's our opportunity to tell the administration and our partners overseas what we must see in an agreement if it is going to be approved by Congress. It boosts congressional oversight, it increases transparency in trade negotiations, and it gives every member of Congress the right to a strong voice in the process.
Madam President, I want to praise the distinguished chairman over in the House of the Ways and Means Committee. He's worked long and hard on these issues, and I think is a great partner to not only the two of us, but to every senator in the United States Senate. What the senator from Montana has just said is absolutely right. Our bill empowers Congress, but it also empowers our negotiators. Its approval will help them conclude high-standard agreements that will open new markets for U.S. exports, ultimately bringing more jobs and economic growth to the United States. Lastly, before I turn back to the chairman, I just want to say again how critical this legislation is for our nation and to commend my friend from Montana, the distinguished chairman of the Finance Committee, for working to make Trade Promotion Authority a reality. He's always been a tremendous leader on international trade, and I'm glad to stand by his side to ensure the Finance Committee and the Senate considers this job-creating legislation in a fair, thorough, and expeditious manner.
Madam President, I say thank you very much to my good friend from Utah. as President Kennedy said 52 years ago, this is about working with our trade partners to build strength together. It's about maintaining U.S. preeminence. And that's why TPA is so important, because it makes our job-creating trade agenda work, and it helps secure the future. I yield the floor.
Madam President,
Senator from Utah.
I ask unanimous consent that Kevin Rosenbaum, detailee to the Senate Committee on Finance, and Stephanie Deary, clerk to the Senate Committee on Finance, be granted the floor privileges for the duration of the Congress.
Without objection.
Thank you. With that, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Ohio.
Madam President, I happen to be on the floor to hear the news from Senator Hatch and Senator Baucus that they've reached an agreement on Trade Promotion Authority. I want to congratulate them on that, working with Chairman Camp over on the House side. This is incredibly important. And these two gentlemen have worked as Republican and Democrat closely together over the last few months with the administration to put in place the opportunity for American workers, American farmers, American service providers to be able to sell their goods, their services on a level playing field by opening up more markets for U.S. products. And I really congratulate them on that. It is sad to me, Madam President, that for the past 5 or 6 years we haven't had Trade Promotion Authority. And without their strong efforts, we still wouldn't have it today. It has been noted that this administration, the Obama administration, is the first one since FDR not to have asked for even the ability to open these markets through what's called Trade Promotion Authority and its predecessors until earlier last March. So until last spring, they hadn't even asked for it. They did ask for it, and thanks to the hard work of these two gentlemen and Congressman Camp, we now are going to have that opportunity. This does give our workers, our farmers, our service providers the ability to be able to access these markets that Senator Baucus and Senator Hatch talked about. And it's critical to economic growth. If you look at the growth in the last 2 or 3 recoveries, much of it was because of expanding exports. And we all believe that the current level of economic growth is disappointing. It's anemic growth. We're looking at long-term unemployed being at historic levels, as we've talked about on the floor all week here. One solution, clearly, is for the United States to do more exporting, and you can't do that without Trade Promotion Authority. I speak as a former U.S. trade representative who had the honor of traveling the world representing our great country, and I will tell you, when you got down to the negotiating across the table with another country, how do you knock down both tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade? If they didn't know that there was an ability with an up or down vote to get that trade agreement done in the United States Congress through something like Trade Promotion Authority, they would not put their last and best offer on the table. That's a reality. Our system is different than the systems of most countries around the world. We have to have Trade Promotion Authority, that's been our experience, in order to get these trade agreements done that help, again, to knock down barriers to the people in the United States who make the best products in the world, who provide the best services in the world, and just are looking for a fair shake and a level playing field. So these two gentlemen, by doing this today, have opened up the possibility for us now to have trade agreements that give us the opportunity to grow our economy and create, as they both said, good-paying jobs with good benefits, and I congratulate them for that. I'm happy to yield to my colleague and chairman, ranking member from Utah.
Well, I want to compliment the distinguished senator because he was our trade representative. He traveled all over the world. He understands how important these issues are. He understands that without TPA, we wouldn't be able to get these particular trade agreements done. He understands how hard we've worked to try and come up with language that we can all accept, in spite of some of the proclivities of this administration. He also has worked diligently with both sides of the floor on these issues, both as trade representative but also as a member of the Senate Finance Committee. And I'm so grateful that we have him on the Senate Finance Committee with all this knowledge and experience to be able to help us on these particular issues. I was a little nonplussed last week when one of the leading trade union presidents in this country got on television and was decrying international trade, when I made the point a little bit earlier that it means tremendous jobs, high-paying jobs, growth in our economy, that means more jobs that if the unions want to organize, they might be able to organize. It's hard for me to understand why anybody in the union movement would be against these free trade policies. It basically allows us to export our materials while, yes, we import others. But that's what free trade's all about. I just want to personally express my very high opinion of the distinguished senator. Because I can tell you this, we are so lucky to have him in the United States Senate with all of his experience in this particular area, but many other areas as well, because he was at OMB as well. There are very few senators in this body that can claim that they have equivalent experience to what our distinguished friend has. And I just want to personally express my admiration and my resolve to help him and others on this and the other side of the floor to understand how important his words are here today, how important it is to have free trade, how important it is to have the trade promotion authorities so that we can have free trade. Because every president since FDR, including him, has been for trade promotion authority. Every president. But there's a fear around here and among some of the Democrats that the unions are going to turn against them. My gosh, they're going to be main beneficiaries of major trade legislation. It's hard for me to comprehend how they can even make a semi-argument against this matter. And hopefully they'll back off and realize this is in their interest too, because it puts us in the real world getting real jobs that are higher pay than we would otherwise get if we didn't have these free trade agreements and if we weren't able to get this passed. But I suspect we'll get this passed, and in large measure, I think, along with the distinguished chairman of the committee, my friend who has just spoken, will be one of the main reasons why we do.
Madam President,
I yield the floor.
will the Senator from Ohio yield the question?
Be pleased to yield to the
Madam
gentleman from
President,
Montana.
I might ask, first of all, I might ask a good friend from Ohio, if he could expand on what I think is a very important point, and it's namely this. With the world becoming more competitive and with globalization, it's ever more important for the United States of America to strive ahead and keep working to develop good products, good high technology products, and to compete in the world. I believe, frankly, when you're treading water, you're sinking. You got to keep moving. You got to keep moving ahead if you're going to make products and boost incomes and help American people. Which leads to another point, namely this. If the Senator could just tell us a little more, explain to frankly some people who may not realize this, that what's involved with TPP. What is TPP? Of course, we need Trade Promotion Authority in order to get TPP. But isn't it important, isn't it critical, isn't it crucial that the United States include a strong Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, not only for economic reasons, but also for geopolitical reasons, to show to the world, to show to Asian countries. We're wondering where the United States is. Is the United States going to show up? Is the United States going to maintain its presence in Asia or not? What will happen if we don't pass Trade Promotion Authority? How will that affect the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations? And what effect will that have on other countries in Asia's perception of the United States? I might remind the Senator, he knows this better than anybody, that unfortunately President Obama was unable to travel to Southeast Asia to attend an ASEAN conference, and many people around the world are wondering whether the United States is going to show up or not anymore in Asia. And so if the Senator could just address how important is it that we engage countries in the Pacific as we negotiate the Trans-Pacific Partnership, in addition to the economic reasons, but also if he could address the geopolitical question, issue, the degree to which it's important for the United States to negotiate an agreement, a successful agreement, and to be there and to show up.
Reclaiming my time, I appreciate the question from my colleague from Montana, and I will say, just based on his question, we're going to miss his wisdom and his experience on the trade issue. And he takes some political risks sometimes, I know, as he did in coming up with an agreement on trade promotion authority, because there are many on both sides of the aisle, and particularly on his side of the aisle, who take a different view of this. And he has been willing to help educate them as to why this is in the interest of Montana farmers and ranchers and workers. And Senator Hatch talked earlier about the impact of trade on the people he represents. You're absolutely right. The Trade Promotion Authority enables us to take that step toward things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, called TPP, a lot of alphabet soup here, but TPA for TPP. And that's important, as the gentleman has just said, because this is the fastest growing region of the world. These are the Pacific countries, including in South America, but also in Asia. It's where the majority of the global GDP is now, and it is an area where, frankly, because of China's strong interest in trade, other countries in the region are looking to the United States to provide not only a market, but also to help them with regard to their own markets. Therefore, more U.S. exports, more of that, as you said, best technology in the world that's the United States, best products in the world that are made here to be able to export to those countries. So they want to have this relationship with us. And as a future ambassador to China, I will just stipulate, I think the gentleman from Montana understands this issue very, very well, but what this Trans-Pacific Partnership does is two things. One, expands trade in an area of the world, again, that's the fastest growing part of our globe, and a place where the tariffs and non-tariff barriers are higher, relatively speaking, than they are here. In other words, by lowering barriers, we get a relative advantage. This agreement also, I hope, will deal with the currency issue, as you all have negotiated in this Trade Promotion Authority, which I support. This is pioneering work you've done in this area. We want to be sure that currency levels are appropriate. There's not unfair trade advantage being given by countries that depreciate their currency by interfering in it. So I think it is about trade, and that's very important for our workers and our farmers, our service providers. But second, it does have this geopolitical element where those countries in the Asia-Pacific area who are allies of ours are looking to us to develop a stronger relationship on the commercial side, but also on the intergovernmental side, to be able to ensure that the United States' role continues in that area. And I think this TPA that these gentlemen have negotiated today, that they're announcing, is incredibly important, because it's a first step toward the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other agreements that we can complete, as we just have recently under the old TPA with South Korea, with Panama, with Colombia, countries where we are seeing expansion of exports and also a stronger relationship with key countries in the region.
If I might, one more question, just very briefly, and that's this. One more opportunity here with a Trade Promotion Authority. With Trade Promotion Authority, clearly we're going to get a Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and clearly without Trade Promotion Authority we won't. Other countries will go their own ways in the Pacific and wonder where's the United States. But there's another issue here.
Exactly.
In addition, there's another issue here. And I wonder if my good friend would agree with this or not. That is this. Not only does Trade Promotion Authority enable our country to negotiate trade agreements of the Pacific, the TPP, but isn't also true it allows the United States of America, passage of TPA, to negotiate with European countries. And doesn't that mean that between Asia TPP and TTIP, that is European countries, that's about 70% of world trade, and so it's an opportunity for the United States to lead in harmonization of trade provisions and regulatory provisions, not only in Asia, in the Pacific, but also in Europe. It's an opportunity to lead. And if we don't pass TPA, is the United States squandering a huge opportunity to lead here in a way that is raise productivity, raise incomes, not just in our countries, but in other countries in the world.
Reclaiming my time, gentleman's absolutely right. And the alternative is not to pass a Trade Promotion Authority and to have continue happen what's frankly been going on for the last 6 or 7 years, which is these other countries around the world are actively negotiating agreements, as you say, using their own standards, but also opening up markets for their workers, their farmers, their service providers, and cutting us out of market share. So what's happened is the European Union, the Chinese, the Canadians, and others have been actively pursuing agreements while we have been on the sidelines because we haven't had Trade Promotion Authority. So not only does this give us an opportunity with this possible agreement with the European Union, which would be an agreement not like a free trade agreement, but would be a partnership on investment, on standards, on being sure that there's a harmonization that's more like the beneficial metrics that we use here in this country that can help both in our economy and, as you say, globally. None of this can happen without us being able to say we're going to have a possibility of taking trade agreements to the Congress for an up or down vote, a fair vote, and every one of these agreements will have to be voted on separately, because in these other countries they won't put that last best offer on the table until they know that. They're not going to be nickeled and dimed and amended to death as they get to the Congress. That's just reality. We got to get off the sidelines. We have to get re-engaged. We have to help our economy, our workers, to get their fair share, to get their market share. And right now we are losing that market share as literally over 100 trade agreements have been negotiated while we've been sitting on the sidelines without having trade promotion authority, both bilateral and regional agreements. So the gentleman's absolutely correct. This is a great opportunity for us to, frankly, take this anemic economy and give it a little shot in the arm. It is part of an overall effort we ought to be doing to provide the kind of economic opportunity that we all want for the people we represent.
The Senator yield.
Happy to yield to the gentleman from Utah.
Madam President.
Senator from Utah.
I think we should all be listening to this man, this senator from Ohio, who has had a wealth of experience not just in budget matters but also especially in these trade matters. You know, there are 11 countries in the TPP, or in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that we'd like to come up with an agreement on. There are 28 different countries in the European agreement on TTIP that we'd like to bring to fruition. And you can go on from there. Now, having said that, I can't compliment my friend from Ohio enough. But I also want to pay tribute to our chairman of the committee. He's willing to do this. He believes in it. He's had plenty of witness that this is the way to do good trade. And he's willing to stand up and see that it's done. And I can't think of a better send-off to China as the new ambassador as soon as we finally finish these confirmation proceedings. And having passed TPA, which enables us to do free trade agreements all over the world and enables our fellow countries to realize that we can get it done. And I want to pay tribute to the chairman, as well as my colleague from Ohio, for their work in this area, and just say that this country will be much the better once we pass TPA and then get these other agreements done. Because it says the United States is resuming its role in the world as the world's chief economic competitor, and doing it in a way that will benefit the whole world, but more importantly, benefit this country. So I want to thank my colleague from Montana, my colleague from Ohio as well. My colleague from Montana is going to be here at least a little bit longer, and hopefully we can get this passed in his honor. And I think he deserves that honor, and I know that the distinguished senator from Ohio and myself will do everything in our power to assist in this matter.
Thank you. Yield back my time, Madam President.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
Madam President.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Many of us have come back from a couple of wonderful weeks in our home states, traveling and visiting with families, and had the privilege of spending time with loved ones and sharing our hopes and plans for the new year. not everyone was so fortunate. I rise today to honor the memory of yet another tragic victim of gun violence in Connecticut and our country. On December 28th, in New Haven, shortly before the beginning of this new year, one family's time together with their son was cut short when Javier Martinez was shot and killed. And his picture is here, his memory is with us today as I ask this body to honor him along with other victims of gun violence who have died since Newtown and who have died before Newtown. And now I ask to be remembered, not only in words but also in action by this body, so that Javier shall not have died in vain. He was only 18 years old. He was a senior at Common Ground High School in New Haven, one of the really extraordinary educational institutions in our state. His teachers and classmates describe him as a kind, intelligent young man who was becoming a leader in the school and in his community. He had a bright future. In fact, he had the whole world, his whole life ahead of him. At Common Ground, a charter school that focuses on sustainability and connecting students with natural resources in our community and in their own communities, he was absolutely thriving. I've heard that some of his classmates and teachers at Common Ground are perhaps watching right now or will watch at some point, and I want to thank them for joining in honoring his memory and continuing his work to make our planet, our world, our nation, and the community of New Haven better, and keeping faith with his memory. Javier cared about his community and the environment and the issues of sustainability and clean air and clean water, and he took action to improve the world around him. Last summer, he participated in a highly competitive internship at the Nature Conservancy, where he worked to protect endangered species. A director of this program regarded Javier as one of the most outstanding participants that the program ever had. And he spent last spring planting trees with the New Haven Urban Resources Initiative. He planted trees that he will never sit under, but the world will be better for all that he did. One small act, one small part of what Javier did to make New Haven and the world better. And this fall, he joined a crew of West River stewards, identifying and documenting sources of pollution along the West River in the New Haven area. Not only did he have a bright future ahead of him, but he knew what he wanted. He was pursuing the American dream. He was seeking and working to make America a better place for him and for his fellow students at Common Ground. And by all accounts, he was not only dedicated, hardworking, but he had a good heart. He had a great sense of himself. He stayed out of trouble. He had no criminal record whatsoever, it goes without saying, and he worked hard at his studies. He was loved in New Haven by his classmates, by his teachers, by all who knew him. And he had a growing dedication to protecting that world. Unfortunately, our society failed to protect him. Failed to protect him during the simple act of walking home. Failed to protect him from gun violence. Failed to protect him in a neighborhood where he thought he would be safe as he walked. On that early morning of December 28th, shortly before 1 a.m., he was found shot to death on the streets of New Haven. And in fact, he was walking from his house to a friend's house. He didn't have a car, so his only choice was to walk. He sustained multiple gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead at the scene. Police are continuing to investigate. I have no doubt that they are working hard, and the New Haven police have been extraordinarily responsive and responsible in combating gun violence. So I know they are going to get answers here. Whether they will ever get enough answers to prosecute someone remains to be seen, but I know they are dedicated to finding out what happened on that night. The death of Javier Martinez is a tragedy, heartbreaking, as heartbreaking as many of the random deaths in America resulting from gun violence. This young man is a testament to our continuing responsibility, our obligation, and our opportunity to combat and prevent gun violence on the streets, in the neighborhoods, across our country. Just a few weeks ago, I spoke on this floor, in this very place, about another promising young person from Connecticut who was killed by a person with a gun whose name was Erica Robinson. The victim of that crime, Erica Robinson, just like Javier, was killed because she was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And we ought to remember some of the other victims. We should keep in mind all of the now tens of thousands, just since Newtown, who maybe survived, but who are changed and challenged in ways they never could have envisioned. Their lives have been changed forever. Amber Smith, who worked as a manager in the New Haven Burger King restaurant, was shot on September 15, 2013, when two robbers entered that Burger King. The robbers demanded that she open a safe in the business, and one of them shot her in the upper hip through her leg. She was just 19 years old at the time, September 15, 2013, and she remembers that she was thinking she was going to die and wondering who would take care of her two small children. She almost bled to death, but was saved, fortunately, by receiving surgery in the emergency room. So she survived the shooting, but she lives with the psychological and the physical trauma of that shooting every day. These random acts of violence may not always make the national news, they may not always take a life, but they change lives and they take lives, one, two at a time. And that shooting death of Javier Martinez and Erica Robinson has become all too often the mundane evil of our time. The banality of evil is found in gun violence, and we seem to accept it all too often with indifference as another news item. And yet, it should be as repugnant and abhorrent and unacceptable as the death of 20 innocent children in Newtown and 6th grade educators, because every act of gun violence diminishes us as a nation and as a community. Our country has come to the point that gun violence can happen anywhere. If your life hasn't been touched by it, there's a near certainty that it will be at some point, tragically, unfortunately, because far too often communities suffer in silence. And we need to end that silence. We need to end the inaction and the acceptance of this mundane and banal evil that lives among us. While we have failed to act in this chamber, even though we had a majority of 55 senators ready to approve very simple, common sense measures to stop gun violence, the President has done what he can through executive actions, most recently on mental health. I commend him for those actions. He has done what he can to strengthen federal background checks for firearms purchases. I thank him for that action. These changes are incremental, but they are steps in the right direction. And states have taken the leadership on this issue as well, maybe even more so than the federal government. My own state of Connecticut, laudably, has passed laws to effectively ban, for example, the sale of assault weapons. But this body and this government needs to act. The federal government has a responsibility that only it can address, because we know that guns are trafficked across state lines, stolen, and illegally bought guns are trafficked across state lines, and no single state can put a stop to it. We know that without action of this body, mental health will remain an unmet need in this country. We know that without action in this country, background checks for people who buy firearms will be incomplete and inadequate. And so Javier's death should be a reminder and a call to action. And as the people of his family and New Haven mourn his death, we should celebrate his contributions in making our planet better, in protecting the precious resources that unfortunately he was unable to enjoy, and resolve to protect better the innocent people, particularly our children, who at any moment, at any place, may become victims of gun violence. Thank you, Madam President, and I yield the floor. Madam, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate be in morning business for debate only until 3:15, and that the Majority Leader be recognized at 3:15, with all other provisions of the previous order remaining in effect.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Madam President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
President.
Senator from Indiana.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent to appreciate the call of quorum.
Without objection.
Madam President, we have been discussing the last couple of days the unemployment insurance issue. A number of us have had concerns relative to the effectiveness of the program, relative to the cost it would undertake and how it would be paid for if it goes forward and is extended, the reforms that we think would be needed to make this a much more effective program. We have not been offered the opportunity to do more than just discuss it on the floor, not been offered the opportunity to offer amendments, offer our ideas, have them debated and voted on. Now, it's my understanding the Majority Leader will be coming to the floor shortly to potentially, to make the decision and tell us what the decision is relative to whether or not we'll have that opportunity. Let me just very quickly say that I've been working with my colleagues, Senator Ayotte from New Hampshire and Senator Portman from Ohio. All three of us voted for the motion to proceed because we felt this is an issue that ought to be discussed and debated, not just simply dismissed, because we would like to make corrections to the program that make it more viable. We would like to raise the issue of whether is there a better way to deal with unemployment in this country. And we have some amendments that would allow us to move and improve and move to that, what we think is a better way, as well as pay for a bill that exceeds, without being paid for, exceeds the budget agreement we just entered into. So I offered 4 amendments. I wasn't insisting on offering all 4. They were similar to what my colleagues had offered. And the 3 of us, I think, want to just very briefly speak to these and indicate to our colleagues what it is that we would be doing. I originally offered the original bill that way last fall that would delay the individual mandate under the Affordable Care Act. As you know, the President, as we all know, the President has delayed for 1 year the mandates on the employer who provides health insurance for their employees, but didn't do so for individuals or those who don't have coverage under their employer. And we did not feel that that was fair. Why one entity and not the other? It also violated the law, but the President took the liberty to exercise that. We're saying, well, let's at least be fair that those who are not covered by the 1 year delay on the mandate on employers would be subject to having to comply, and I won't go through all the details, but we've seen the disaster that's happened in terms of that rollout. So my amendment, number 2611, to this, I'm going to select that out as the amendment I'm going forward with, as my colleagues have also had excellent ideas, and they'll be offering those. And frankly, I agree with all their amendments and what they're doing also. So I think we're pretty much on the same page. This amendment would delay the individual employer mandates under Obamacare for 1 year. The estimated cost savings of this is $35 billion. I think that's a savings that obviously could be used for a number of offsets. And I think at this particular point in time, I'd like to yield the floor and let my colleague from New Hampshire explain her amendment and how that would be, the savings would be applied to some very, very necessary things. So, Madam President, with that, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from New Hampshire.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank my colleague from Indiana. As he said, I, like my colleague from Indiana and my colleague from Ohio, moved to allow this bill to go forward for debate. And I thought it was important that we have a debate on, obviously, the situation of struggling workers in our country and on the issue of whether to extend unemployment benefits for them. And I've been clear that on the pending bill, if there is a way we can responsibly pay for this temporary 3-month extension to do that, that I would be willing to support that, except the current bill does not have a way to pay for it, because I don't believe that we should be adding to our debt, $17 trillion, and our yearly deficits in order to do this. But let me just say that I have a very common sense amendment. It's Amendment 2603, and let me just say what it's about. My amendment fixes what is abuse in our tax code. The Treasury Inspector General found that individuals who are not authorized to work in this country are collecting billions of dollars in tax refunds by filing for the additional child tax credit. The disturbing part about this is the trend is that there has been a steady increase each year of billions of dollars collected by illegal workers seeking these refunds. And investigations of these tax refunds have found some gross examples of fraud. Examples of refunds for children that don't live in the United States of America. Examples of fraud of many who are children that may not even exist. For example, in Indiana, they found 4 unauthorized workers claiming over 20 children who lived in a residence, fraudulently collecting tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars. They found examples of tax refund claims for children who live in Mexico, not the United States of America. In North Carolina, 1,000 tax returns linked to 8 addresses, 1,000 tax returns linked to 8 addresses, refunding $5 million in tax refunds. Another example in North Carolina, 398 returns associated with 2 apartments, 398 returns, refunding $1.9 million to unauthorized workers that aren't authorized to work in our country. And there was no evidence that the children being claimed either lived in the United States of America or even existed for that matter. So my amendment is very straightforward in terms of the fix. The filer of the tax return who is going to claim the additional child tax credit would have to list a Social Security number. This is the same requirement for those who claim the earned income tax credit for which you can receive a tax refund if you qualify. And so it would be simply to add that same requirement. And what the Joint Tax Committee has estimated is that we could save $20 billion over the next 10 years simply by treating this child tax credit, the filers of that, a Social Security number, just like the earned income tax credit, that they would have to put a Social Security number as well. And what would this $20 billion go for? With this $20 billion, we can pay for the recent cuts in the budget that were unfair, where our men and women in uniform, military retirees, were singled out for cuts to their retirement, to their cost of living increases, including, by the way, our wounded warriors, those who were medically retired, who got a cut to their cost of living increase in the recent budget. This is the only group that was singled out this way. Those who have taken the bullets for our country, many who have done multiple tours for us in Afghanistan and Iraq, and some who have suffered horrible wounds, including those that many of us have had the privilege of visiting in Walter Reed. So we can pay for and fix the military retirement cuts. As many members on both sides of the aisle have said, we have a commitment to do that because we think that that was unfair. What else can we do with this? We can also pay for the bill pending on the floor, the 3 months of extension of unemployment benefits for American workers who are struggling during this period, who are trying to get back to work. And finally, we can also take the remainder of the savings and apply it to the deficit. So again, fix tax abuse where there has been fraud, rampant fraud found by investigations, by requiring a Social Security number just like the Earned Income Tax Credit, and in return it's a threefer. We can pay for the 3-month unemployment extension on this floor. We can fix the unfair cut to military retirees and to our wounded warriors, and we can help reduce our deficit.
Senator's time has expired.
Madam President.
Mr. Majority Leader. Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, all post-cloture time with respect to the motion to proceed to S-1845 is considered expired.